Hey everybody, it's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at Warsaw Concerts, and today we are here with Michelle, aka Away of Voivod. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to have you here. Your latest record is The Wake, which came out last year. Let's just give a rundown on the record cycle thus far.
Um, can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
How is the record cycle for The Wake, your latest record?
Record cycle?
Yeah, like how's it been so far?
Well, actually, it's very intricate music-wise, and it's been received wonderfully. So it's a good indication that we can go down that prog fusion thrash metal path.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I've noticed that being that Voivod's been around since 1982, do you take a new approach to every record, or is there a formula that you stick with songwriting?
Well, we do have a few tricks in the sense that we do a lot of improvisations at our studio. We record everything and we pick the best parts, and Chewy, our guitar player, rearrange these parts into Voivodian material. But quite often, Chewy will come with a full structure that will morph into Voivod material when we come in. And Rocky has a few riffs as well. So it's basically the same way of working all the time, except that we've been touring so much the last few years that we had to find a way of working on the road. So we do demos on a laptop, either in the back of the bus or backstage, and so this way we're hoping to have more releases and more quickly.
Yeah. You have so many albums out now, so when you play live, is it like harder to put like a set list together?
Yes, definitely. We have to skip an album here and there once in a while, and on this tour, we're not playing the Roar album, and we are also skipping the Eric Forrest and the Jason Newsted eras. Eventually, it's gonna pop back into the set list, but right now we're pretty much covering from War and Pain to The Outer Limits, with some songs from Post Society and The Wake.
Yeah. I'd imagine there's always like that one fan who wants to hear play a song off this album or play a song off that album, and it's got to be hard, right?
Yeah, it is hard. Many people are yelling, like ripping headaches, and we had to skip it on this tour. It's usually part of the set list, but next time.
Yeah. Now, Voivod has played with many different types of bands. Like you're playing with Yop tonight, but you've played with Napalm Death. You did tours with Ozzy. Depending on like what tour you're on, do you notice maybe a different type of audience or a reaction to your music?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, if we go on a headliner tour, we'll have our loyal following everywhere. And but if like on this tour or opening for or for bigger acts or co-headlining, we'll have a whole lot of people discovering Voivod, because even though the name is out there, not that many people know the music. We're still pretty underground.
Really?
Hmm.
Yeah.
But it's always fun to have new people discovering the band. It's really, really great.
Yeah. Now, being the drummer of a band, I always like asking drummers this because I've always said the drummer is the most important person in the band. You're keeping everything together. So, when you're playing live, are you just primarily focused on keeping the song together, or is there ever a moment for a drummer where you like to go all out, like, and go crazy with like the guitar player or singer would do?
Well, I try to keep everybody into the song as much as I can. I do have a freestyle. I got it from Filthy Animal Taylor from Motorhead, where I don't necessarily make the same roll at the same spot every night, but I try to keep the structure intact so the guys don't get too lost. But I do have a freestyle and a bit of improv there and there, and a lot of different dynamics. The songs from The Wake are already different on this tour than they are on the album.
Yeah.
Mm.
Really? Now, when you're playing live versus in the studio, you kind of just answered that question. Is it a different experience playing your music versus like in a practice space and in front of an audience?
Yes, it's very different. I tend to make more of a raucous live, and in the studio, I try to hit the different parts of the drums equally, and but live I just hit as hard as I can for 60 or 90 minutes, and it's definitely a different experience. The focus is the same because our music is pretty proggy, so the parts are coming fast at me. So I keep the focus there, but I might be a bit more loose on stage.
Yeah, I've noticed. I feel like the stage, I feel like the studio is more structured and more perfected and less room for improvising, right?
Yes, I everything is a bit more calculated in the studio, and I try to sort of make a song with the drums alone. It's a different experience for sure. Just to have the headphones on is different than I don't play with headphones on stage at all. So it's a very different experience.
And you don't play to a click track either, or?
I don't play to a click track live. I do in the studio. Um, since the early 90s, but live I never really played with a click track at all.
Oh, really? That's impressive, I have to say.
I try to keep the groove going, and main thing is not to speed up. I tend to speed up. The songs I notice are a lot more, a lot faster live than they are in the studio. It's something I realize afterwards.
Yeah. I heard it's sometimes harder to play to a click track than without it, but I don't know if that's true.
Well, it really depends on the time signature and some stuff like we call it triolet in French. It's hard on a click, but usually it makes things easier in the studio anyway.
Yeah. And one other question I was curious is because you are one of the first bands people think of when they hear Canadian metal coming from a French Canadian region. And, Canada's home to so many great bands now, like Cataclysm and Threat Signal and Archspire and so much more. So, was there, back in the 80s, was there like a scene in Canada like there was now? Or,
Well, when we grew up, there were just a couple of bands coming up north where we were born, northern Quebec, and these were Exciter, Anvil, and Connie Hatch, and they had a very strong influence on us. And it's really when we released War and Pain that the doors opened for uh, uh, bands in Quebec to grow and follow the path we had cleared for them, and of course now the Canadian and Quebec metal is very respected. Uh, it's like it's very technical, and it probably comes from Rush and Canadian bands like that. And just in Montreal, we have tons of friends that we cross paths with across the globe. Cryptopsy and Gorguts and Cataclysm, like you said, and so there are tons of bands like that, and Annihilator from the West Coast, or maybe they moved to the East Coast now. I don't know where Jeff is at
Yeah.
these days, and
Devin Townsend.
Devin, super talented guy, and so yeah, there is tons of heavy stuff coming out of Canada.
Yeah, and it's a big country, so I'd imagine it's different depending if it's like Vancouver or Quebec or Ontario, right?
Yeah, I don't know if there is a metal scene all across Canada. I mean, we do play shows all across Canada, but I don't know if there are that many bands, except on the West Coast and the East Coast. And also, there was excellent punk scene in Canada with DOA, SNFU, Deglo Abortion, a whole lot of bands from Montreal, Fair Warning, The Unruled, Countdown Zero, and Genetic Control. So the crossover happened very quickly in around 85 in Canada.
Yeah. So before we go, I'd like to thank you so much for your time. Is there just anything else with the record cycle for The Wake? Like, could we be expecting Voivod on the road anymore this year, or new music?
Well, we are booked pretty solid this year. We're gonna come back in USA for the Maryland Death Fest. And right after that, we go play the festivals in Europe. Then we come back and play all across USA in the fall, and then we go back to Europe in the winter to play all the clubs. And next will probably be South America and Southeast Asia, and so. But we are writing material right now on the road.
Awesome.
Mm.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for your time,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Michelle Away of Voivod. Pick up the wake if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time on Heavy New York.
Cheers.